Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take your stack of sources, pull out the really important nuggets, and basically give you a shortcut to being well-informed.
Sounds good.
Today, we're heading to the Caribbean. We're diving into a pretty fascinating collection of material all about Cuba's geography.
Right.
Now, when most people think Cuba, it's usually sun-drenched beaches,
Yeah.
maybe old cars, right?
That's the standard.
But these sources you sent over, they reveal something much richer, a much more complex landscape.
Absolutely. This stuff goes way, way beyond the postcard view. Our mission today is really to unpack that hidden geography, explore the lesser-known bits.
Like what kind of things?
Well, rugged mountains, surprisingly vast plains, and even these really intricate cave systems. And we're sticking strictly to the information provided in these sources.
Okay. And just looking at the basics here, the sheer scale jumps out. Cuba isn't some tiny little island.
No, not at all.
The sources say it stretches 12,250 kilometers long. That's what, 776 miles?
Mm-hmm.
Covering over 109,000 square kilometers. And the coastline, that number's huge, over 5,700 kilometers.
Yeah, 3,540 miles of coastline. That scale itself hints at the diversity we're going to talk about.
Right.
The sources really set the stage. They point out how all these features, the mountains, the plains, the caves, they're not just like scenery.
They actually do things.
Exactly. They shape the climate, they influence the wildlife, which is pretty unique, and they're woven into the culture too, in ways you might not expect.
Okay, let's dig into that then. This diverse landscape beyond the famous beaches, what did the sources highlight first?
Well, they make it super clear Cuba isn't just flat beaches. You've got these significant mountain ranges.
Like the Sierra Maestra, I saw that mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Down in the southeast, that's home to Pico Chiquino, the island's highest point. Almost 2,000 meters.
Wow, 1,974 meters, yeah. That's 6,476 feet. Pretty high for a Caribbean island. Are there others?
Yep. The Escambray Mountains, too, in central Cuba. They've got peaks over 1,100 meters as well.
And these aren't just bumps on the map. The sources emphasize their impact, right? Something about rain.
Oh, definitely. A big impact. There's a 2022 study mentioned from the Cuban Meteorological Institute. It details how these mountains basically create different climate zones.
How so?
They block the prevailing winds, so you get much wetter conditions on the eastern windward sides, and it's significantly drier in the west on the leeward side.
Huh. So the mountains directly cause different rainfall patterns.
Precisely, which is a major contrast to the plains. The material notes that plains actually cover like 60% of the island.
60%, that's a lot. Any specific ones mentioned?
The Ciego de Avila plain is highlighted as a big, expansive one.
And these plains sound vital. The sources talk about fertility, agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely essential. Think sugarcane, tobacco, citrus fruits, staples of the Cuban economy and, feeding people. They're the agricultural heartland.
Okay, so mountains creating weather, plains providing food. What about the coasts, beyond just sandy spots like Veradero?
Well, the sources do acknowledge the iconic beaches. Sure, Veradero gets a mention, but they quickly pivot to other critical coastal features.
Like mangroves.
Mangroves, yeah, and coral reefs. Really extensive systems.
And they're not just pretty, they serve a purpose, protecting the coast.
Exactly. Vital protection against erosion. And that's becoming more and more critical.
Why is that?
Well, there's 2024 data in here from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It shows sea levels rising around Cuba by 3 millimeters a year because of climate change.
3 millimeters might not sound like much, but year after year.
It adds up. So those natural buffers, the mangroves and reefs, they become absolutely essential for the island's resilience against storm surge and erosion.
So right off the bat, just looking at the surface, the picture is way more complex. Mountains, plains, crucial coastlines.
And all of that is tied to what's happening underneath, the geology.
Ah, right. The sources really get into the island's foundations.
They do. They explain Cuba's position there on the Caribbean plate. Tectonic activity over millions of years basically sculpted the island.
And a key ingredient mentioned is limestone.
Loads of limestone.
Right.
Formed from ancient marine sediments way back when.
And limestone geology leads to specific kinds of landscapes.
That's right. It creates what are called karst landscapes, areas where the rock dissolves, basically. That gives you sinkholes, underground rivers, and significantly caves.
Okay, karst. And these unique formations support unique life.
They really do. Ecosystems you won't find elsewhere. The Zapata Swamp is a prime example given in the sources.
Right. The UNESCO Biosphere Reserve How does limestone tie into a swamp?
The swamp thrives because of that underlying limestone structure controlling the water flow and chemistry. And the biodiversity, it's incredible.
What kind of numbers are we talking?
A 2023 report cited here from Cuba's National Botanical Garden mentions over 900 plant species and 175 bird species, including the critically endangered Cuban crocodile.
Wow. All thriving in that specific geological setting.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of geology driving biology.
And we can circle back to climate here too, right? The Sierra Maestra acting as a rain shield.
Yeah, the sources really underscore that. It creates this dramatic divide. You get something like 2,000 millimeters, 79 inches of rain annually on the windward side.
And on the other side.
Much less, maybe 1,000 millimeters, 39 inches on the leeward plains. So you get these distinct microclimates, all because of the mountain's orientation and height rooted in that geology.
Fascinating. And the coastal mangroves we mentioned.
The sources note they typically grow on sandy or muddy ground right at the coast. They stabilize the shoreline, trap sediment, and crucially, act as nurseries for fish.
Which directly helps local fishing communities.
Absolutely. A direct ecological and economic link.
So it really paints a picture of Cuba as this biodiversity hotspot, fundamentally because of how its geology and its different ecosystems interact.
Precisely. But there's one aspect of this geography that the sources really emphasize as being, well, truly hidden, almost secret.
Okay, I think I know where you're going. This has to be the cave systems. That part of the material was really surprising.
It's an entire world underground, isn't it? Formed by that same limestone, just slowly dissolving over millennia. Water doing its work.
And the number, it's kind of staggering. The sources say over 20,000 caves identified.
20,000. It's incredible. And one really stands out in the material.
Yeah.
The Gran Caverna de Santo Tomas.
Where's that?
In Pinar del Rio province, the sources describe it as the largest known system in Cuba. Get this. 46 kilometers, that's 28 miles of explored passages.
Explored, meaning there could be much more.
Exactly. And these caves aren't just tunnels, they're like archives of the past.
How so? What do they hold?
Well, a report from the Cuban Speleological Society, cited from 2021, talks about the formations inside stalactites, stalagmites. Some of them date back 1.5 million years.
1.5 million years.
Yeah. They contain chemical signatures, isotopes that scientists can read like pages in a history book telling us about ancient climates, rainfall patterns, that kind of thing.
Wow. Geological time capsules. There's another one mentioned too, Cueva del Indio, near Viñales.
Right, that one's noted as being more accessible. You can even take a boat trip along an underground river inside part of it.
Cool. But they're not just geological wonders, are they? The sources talk about life in the caves.
Yes, they're described as important biodiversity havens, too.
Biodiversity. What lives in pitch-black caves?
Amazing creatures adapted to total darkness. The sources highlight a blind fish, Lucifuga subterranea. It's found only in Cuban caves.
Only there. Wow.
And bats, too. Caves are vital roosting sites for many species, like the Cuban fruit bat mentioned here, and these bats fly out at night and are essential pollinators for plants up on the surface.
So the underground world supports the world above.
Definitely. But here's the really intriguing part, the hidden element. The sources, referencing National Geographic, point out that only about 10% of those estimated 20,000 caves have been fully explored or mapped.
Only 10%.
Yeah. They even mention a recent Cuban-Russian project from 2019 that was still uncovering totally new chambers and passages.
So there's this vast, unknown subterranean landscape under Cuba.
Pretty much. It really challenges that surface-level view of the island, doesn't it? Makes you realize how much might still be undiscovered.
Absolutely. And these natural features, they aren't separate from people. The sources link them directly to Cuba's history and culture.
That's a crucial connection the material makes. Take the Sierra Maestra Mountains again.
Not just geographically important, but historically, too.
Hugely. The Motorcycle Diaries, Che Guevara's book, is referenced, detailing how that rugged terrain was absolutely critical for Fidel Castro's revolutionary forces in the 1950s. It provided cover, a stronghold. History happened there because of the geography.
And the plains. We talked about agriculture.
The sources connect those fertile plains directly to the economic history. The sugar plantations that dominated the colonial era. Huge societal impact.
And cultural impact, too.
Yes. The sources draw a line from the rhythms and experiences of enslaved Africans working on those plantations to the evolution of Afro-Cuban music and dance, like the rumba. Its roots are right there in the landscape and its history.
Even the caves have a human history.
A very ancient one. The material mentions indigenous Taino people using caves for shelter and, importantly, for rituals.
Is there evidence?
Archaeological findings. A 2020 Cuban Heritage Report is cited, mentioning petroglyphs, rock carvings found in places like Cueva del Guanajo, dating back to 500 AD. Clear evidence of ancient human use.
So, mountains for revolution, plains for economy and culture, caves for ancient rituals. These features are really woven into the fabric of Cuba.
Deeply embedded, it adds so many layers beyond just, tourism brochures.
Right. But with all this incredible natural and cultural heritage, the sources also raise some concerns about preservation.
Yeah, that's a critical point towards the end. They highlight some pretty urgent challenges. Climate change is a big one.
How's it affecting Cuba specifically, according to the sources?
Cuba's Environment Agency data is mentioned, showing a 0.5-degree C temperature rise since 1950. That might not sound huge, but it stresses sensitive ecosystems, especially in the mountains and along the coasts, those reefs and mangroves we talked about.
And it's not just climate change, is it? Deforestation.
That's another major issue flagged. FAO data cited shows a 5% loss of forest cover just between 2000 and 2020. That directly impacts habitats, including those connected to the cave systems affecting water flow, bat populations, everything.
Are there efforts to protect these places?
Yes, the sources mention Cuba's National Plan for Protected Areas updated in 2023. The goal is ambitious. Safeguard 20% of the island's territory by 2030.
20% is significant, but are there challenges?
The material is realistic here. It specifically notes that funding shortages are a major hurdle. Protecting such diverse landscapes costs money, resources, enforcement. It's a huge undertaking.
Understandable. What about the future of exploration, especially those caves?
The sources touch on that too. New technologies are being tested. Drones, sonar mapping.
To see inside the caves without actually having to crawl through every passage.
Exactly. The University of Havana apparently tested some of this tech in 2024. The hope is that these tools could help explore those vast unknown areas faster and safer, potentially revealing new species, maybe more geological secrets.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, our listener? We started with your sources, thinking maybe peaches. And we've ended up uncovering this incredible geographical diversity, towering mountains, vital plains, critical coastlines, and this enormous, largely hidden world of caves underground.
Yeah, this deep dive really shows that Cuba's landscapes aren't just passive scenery, they're active forces. They've shaped its unique biodiversity, its complex history, its vibrant culture. It's a geography of resilience, really.
And a geography that clearly still holds a lot of secrets.
Definitely. It's a testament to the power of nature and a reminder that even places we think we know can have these vast, unexplored dimensions.
Which leaves us with a final thought, something for you to chew on based on all this.
Given those immense unexplored cave systems and the real ongoing pressures from climate change, what do you think are the most important natural secrets Cuba still holds? What's still waiting to be fully understood or maybe urgently protected?
And what might learning those secrets tell us about the island's past, its present, and maybe its future?
A lot to think about there.
Indeed. Thank you so much for providing the sources that let us take this really fascinating deep dive into Cuba's hidden geography today.